The forest smelled of pine needles and wet earth, the gentle rays of the spring sun penetrating through the crowns of the trees, the familiar fiddling of small animals, the singing of birds. Everything is familiar. Somewhere at the edge of the forest near the border, a car stopped. A young guy got out of it. From the trunk he pulled out a large package and carelessly threw it on the ground. Then he took out a shovel and entered the forest. The forest suddenly became gloomy and unfriendly. Spotting a young pine tree, he began digging a hole and did not notice the eyes of strangers. When the hole was deep enough, he brought a bundle and lowered it into the hole. Taking a shovel, he covered the hole with earth, covered it with branches and left. From the shade of the trees, someone came out and examined the grave. Kneeling down, she began to rake the soft earth with her hands. It was not a pleasant awakening. Her whole body ached, especially her head. Her mouth was dry and her throat felt like sandpaper. The sun was beating down on her face. She opened her eyes and inhaled. It smelled strange and unfamiliar, but it reminded her of something. A spacious room, furnished with homemade furniture, very cozy. The soft feather bed and warm blanket completed the picture, just didn't explain where she was in principle. Her last memory was of a nightclub, a friend's birthday party, some guys and all, darkness. Ah, yes, and the smell of damp earth and pine needles. "You awake?" A tall, blonde-haired woman entered the room. "Who are you? How did I get here?" the girl asked. "Do you remember your name?" suddenly asked the woman, looking at the girl intently. "Me? Of course," she started to say, but immediately stopped. She didn't remember. "I don't think I remember." "My name is Taya. Let's have lunch now and then you need more rest. Your body is too exhausted," Taya said. The girl followed the hostess out. There was a simple meal on the table, potatoes with mushrooms, crunchy cucumbers and berries in a bowl. Eating without appetite, the thought of her name kept her mind off of it. How could she forget her name, and how did she end up here? This place was obviously wilderness. "Do you have a cell phone?" "No, there is no connection to the outside world here," Taya answered calmly. "Give me your hand, I'll help you remember." The girl held out her hand, and as soon as Taya touched it, she was pierced by a terrible pain, such that she almost lost consciousness. That evening appeared before her eyes, the table laden with drinks and appetizers. Here was her friend Katya flirting merrily with some tall brutal, and here she is dancing with someone without seeing his face. She feels dizzy, everything is floating, she hears other people's voices. Suddenly she feels a strong pain in her lower abdomen, blows on her face and body. She watches as if from the sidelines as she was being abused by strange men. And again a rush of pain, wave after wave comes over her, and she slumps into darkness. She comes to, she is cramped and gasping for breath. She's being carried in the car. Fear completely floods her consciousness. She is dying. She feels herself being carried somewhere, the smell of pine needles and earth, falling earth right on top of her. She wants to scream with all her might, but she can't. She can't do anything else. Darkness comes again, now blessed. "Am I dead?" the girl asked. She couldn't react normally to her memories yet. "I never remembered my name. Dara, you'll be Dara. The circle has closed, you've returned to the bosom of nature home. I don't get it. You have the blood of the ancient gods, specifically Tara. Tara is the goddess, guardian of forests, groves, trees. There was once a temple to the goddess here on this spot. Then people honored the gods and brought gifts. Now not everyone knows about the gods, Java and Navi. The world has changed and not for the better. Why do I have the blood of the gods in me?" Dara smiled. "You don't remember your parents, do you? I don't remember anything at all now." She shook her head bitterly. "That's true. Listen to me carefully. Your physical body is almost dead. You're between Yav and Nav. I could only pull you out and keep you here. You have two ways. You must accept yourself and your power. Then you can return to your body. Or you can accept yourself and make the transition. I'll take you to the edge of the worlds. Think you don't have much time." With those words, Taya left the house, and Dara sat down by the window. Thoughts swarmed in her head. Dara took Taya's words and her fate with a strange calmness. Feelings of confusion, anger, and disbelief, completely unfamiliar to her, were stirring in her soul. Taya sat on a fallen tree trunk, brushing her hair and thinking about her own thoughts. Dara crouched down beside her. "I want to go back. I don't know if you're telling the truth. I don't remember my parents. I was found in a wooded area. They sent me to an orphanage. I was just a baby. And then Aunt Zlata took me away. She died a few years ago from an illness. Dara told me. Is Dara my real name?" "Yes. You made the right decision because you're strong and should not give up," Taya said approvingly. It will be difficult for you, they won't let you go willingly. Who? Dara was frightened. The Navi. But you'll survive the night and you can return to Yav. Now drink this. The woman held out a large clay mug with an acrid-smelling potion. This is to restore you to the world of the living. Think of it as the elixir of life. Dara lay back on the bed, slumber dragging her down, and she fell into oblivion. She suddenly saw herself standing alone in the middle of the darkness and wasteland. She had a doomed look, white lights swirling around her. Navi, she is awake, this is all happening now. She could feel these demons taking the rest of her strength and energy, but she didn't have the strength to resist. Suddenly, there was a rough yet ringing bark. A three-headed puppy ran up to her. Dara even forgot about herself in surprise. The dog barked desperately at the demons and finally dispersed them. "You're my protector!" Dara patted the dog on all three heads. Then Dara was dragged somewhere, spun around and opened her eyes in the same room, Taya sitting next to her. "You made it back." Taya stroked Dara's head. "And you brought someone with you." A three-headed puppy was rummaging in the thick shadows. "A half-breed?" Taya smiled slightly. "Why half-breed? He has real blood in him. It's alive. You're both half-bloods, so it's fate. He helped me, saved me. What shall we call him?" "Cerberus!" Cerberus bellowed approvingly from his dark hiding place. Dara fell asleep again, dreamless this time, for the last time. She felt Taya stroking her hair affectionately, hot tears dripping and setting clear stones on the floor by the bed. Taya looked at Dara one last time. It was time. Dara walked across the meadow carrying her suitcase. Cerberus ran beside her, manifesting in the shadows. Soon they would be home and he would be at ease. Yes, the two half-breeds have become friends, and though their relationship has its difficulties so far, the girl is sure it will pass. She found the road without difficulty, though she had never been here before. When she came to her senses in the hospital after a time, the doctors basically gave her no chance. And then they called her a miracle, and the doctors almost gods. Dara only snorted at that. The nurse Galia took care of her in the hospital, and she noticed the drastic changes in her appearance while she was still unconscious. Her hair grew back and lightened almost before her eyes. Her wounds began to heal dramatically. Her tests were coming back to normal. It was as if someone was infusing her with life. Flowers standing in the recreation of this wing began to grow faster and bloomed all at once. Galia even began to associate Dara with flowers and nature, but then she laughed at herself. It is necessary to think up, as if the fairy is her patient. And also Galia felt sorry for this young beautiful girl, because she heard the conversation between the two doctors. Dara was about to be disconnected from life support, and finally, Dara regained consciousness in the hospital. The doctors were surprised that her condition was basically quite satisfactory. After another week she was discharged and Dara returned to her apartment. All this time Cerberus had been by her side, guarding her peace and sleep. The apartment was dusty and stuffy and Dara cringed at the smell of dampness. After tidying up, she decided to take a walk. Not far from the house there was a small public garden, except that before her illness it was bigger, but now many trees were cut down, bushes uprooted. The girl stopped in confusion, looking at the half-naked public garden. Cerberus suddenly manifested for a moment and rushed into the forest. Standing in the middle of the clearing, Dara cried, "People do not honor and have completely stopped respecting nature. Taya is right, man will destroy himself. By cutting down forests, man condemns himself to the wrath of the gods, and no one knows how it will manifest itself. Dara has decided to return to the forest and live there for a while, but first she must repay those who almost killed her." That night she showed up at the same nightclub. The girl knew she was good and still had her charms, so the guards didn't even ask for a ticket. In a secluded corner sat her offenders, and among them, Katya, her friend. So that's how it was. A storm of emotions was rising, boiling, and about to burst out. Dara sensed Cerberus's presence. "Hey," she approached their table. "You?" Three voices drowned out by the music. "Me, not buried deep enough." Dara nodded to the big guy with the tattoo. He was embarrassed and looked at Katya saying, "What do you say?" Katya sat petrified because she was sure that Dara was dead. She knew she was in a coma in the hospital and was going to be disconnected because she was brain dead, and here she is, standing there, quite alive, and she's looking at her in a way that gives Katerina goosebumps. "Shall we have some fun?" Dara suddenly suggested. The guys nodded uncertainly, looking at the girl's handsome figure. The guys were hypnotized, fascinated, and would have followed her anywhere. They paid, left the club, and the big guy got behind the wheel of the SUV. Soon the car was speeding down the highway toward the forest. The guys and Katya sat in the back seat frozen, with a straight back, almost without blinking. Even from the outside you could see that they were out of their minds. It was hard to call it a forest, just a young oak grove. Everyone got out of the car and entered the grove. Suddenly Cerberus appeared. Katya was the first to wake up. She saw the dog. "Oh God, help!" She started to back away but suddenly froze under Dara's gaze. "You must be punished. The powers that be have decreed your punishment, and I will only carry it out. Don't worry, you'll come back in 50 years, maybe you'll come to your senses. If they don't cut it down before then, that's the worst thing about this punishment. You will feel, see, know everything, but you won't be able to do anything, and you could be destroyed at any moment," Dara told me calmly. "A perfect revenge, as far as I'm concerned. Revenge, retribution, punishment, whatever you want to call it." One of the boys suddenly decided to run, but Cerberus was alert. A short growl was enough for him to calm the fugitive down. "Dara, please, we're friends," Katya cried. "Really? Friends? And when you got me drunk and put me under those," Dara nodded at the frozen guys, "was that an act of friendship? When they beat me up, abused me, was that an act of love? And when they buried me, what do you call that?" Dara's hair fluttered, the wind picked up, the trees echoed her. They became witnesses, faithful and silent. Cerberus sensed his mistress's mood, growled menacingly. The first lightning flashed in the sky. Dara reached out her hand to Katya. The girl in front of her eyes began to be covered with bark. Her hands turned into thin branches, on which leaves appeared. A few minutes later, young oaks appeared in the grove. She stroked the thinnest tree trunk in farewell. "Goodbye," Dara whispered. There was home. Dara felt truly at home. Even the whispering of the trees seemed familiar. Cerberus behaved like a normal dog, but with 3 heads. The girl already knew that the middle head of this hellhound was the most intelligent. Nothing had changed in the house, it was just as cozy and warm, smelled delicious, except that Taya was nowhere to be found, and suddenly, Dara realized everything, as if she had an epiphany. Taya's gone, she's not coming back, and she is her mother. The girl sat on the threshold of the house, the dog beside her. A half-wilted flower was lying next to her. Dara put it in the palm of her hand and touched it lightly. The flower came to life before her eyes, gaining strength and color, even the smell appeared. She sat like that until the evening and thought. She went to bed late at night and woke up at dawn. On the chair beside the bed was some sort of airy dress. "I look more like a nymph that way," she smiled. "Half-breed." The forest was quiet, peaceful, everything glowed with real life. She's home.